Delicious brain rot.
Skibbity Fortnite! Why do you look so confused?
Delicious brain rot.
Skibbity Fortnite! Why do you look so confused?
Yo, what's going on? Perfect timing. We're down to 0 viewers. We gotta start low so we can act high. This is NPC the game coming to you live from District 13, Taiwan. And this is the Brain Rot episode and Wittgenstein. So, brain rot. Why brain rot? Why brain rot? It's because about 2 years ago, when I went to my TV and turned it on and was using the smart function, the YouTube app on the TV, I saw that my son, who at the time was very young, he still is very young, was browsing the YouTube on there. And on the screen, there was this strange head coming out of a toilet. And it kept saying skibbity doop, skibbity dop, skibbity doopy doo, like over and over again, bro. And I was like, what is going on here? Didn't know what was going on. And I kept seeing it more and more in the algorithm. I kept seeing what is the other one? Poppy's Playtime, Five Nights at Freddy. These are all brain rot content. And brain rot, to make it simple, is it's content that really seems to have no real value. I mean, that's how it's usually defined. It has a lot of bright colors and bells and whistles to get your attention. And yeah, it's some wild shit. Let me get this down real quick so I could share this real quick.
Just brain rot.
Skibbity Fortnite. Why do you look so confused? Have you never been a Sigma rizzing up a Flowberry Burst yacht in reckless railways?
It's the catch-all term describing the past few years of low-quality yet massively popular internet culture, from skibbity toilet to lobotomy memes, to even subjects in offline spaces. Brain rot is an incredibly flexible and easy-to-apply piece of slang. It can apply to shitposting, to YouTube Kids, to any content considered low-quality yet large in quantity. Ultimately, it perfectly describes the effects of prolonged exposure to a fast-paced online world, dominated by short clips designed to grab the attention of the viewer and ensure that they swipe to the next piece for hours on end without gaining any meaningful stimulation from the app.
Yeah, and come to find out, one of the cats that made this popular was a young teenager in England, Islamic cat, and he had saw how, and you probably seen this before, how they'll post some content of theirs, and then they'll have it on the top half of the screen, and on the bottom half of the screen there'll be somebody playing GTA, right? It'll just be playing and playing and playing, or someone like cutting fruit, or a car running over a jar of marbles, brightly colored marbles, right? Something to get your attention, while whatever the person is talking about on the top of the screen is playing the audio. Right? And he learned that this cat in England, this teenager, if he learned that if he doubled down and took that way of making content and just opened up a lot of channels on TikTok, for example, and just blasted content out, he would get like views. And at the time they had, you were getting paid just for views on the TikTok. And yeah, I think he ends up making like, now he has a course, and he's only 17. You think he's making like $500,000 a month off this brain rot type of content. And before you go there, I mean, let's talk about language. That's all we do is we talk around here, right? Because brain rot is not just this thing for alpha millennials to engage with. It could be anything from going on live streams, even this stream maybe, and just zoning out on some content that seems to have no real value. I mean, I go back and forth, just like some of the philosophers back in the day would go back and forth. But most of the philosophers, I have to say, the ones that I've looked up and did a little bit of research on, they seldom change their mind about anything, as much as Wittgenstein did about language. And the shift from his early masterpiece, the Tracticus, to his later work, Philosophical Investigations, is probably as radical as the move from modern to postmodern philosophy. And in his first phase, Wittgenstein believed in logic and the realist approach, we can say, to philosophy. And I think he saw, when I'm reading, he saw logic as a way to decode reality, and he believed that language mirrored the structure of the world. And this early phase influenced earlier analytical philosophies that he was inspired by, such as the Vienna Circle. And later on, Wittgenstein left behind his old view that we can come to know the structure of reality by studying the structure of language. Philosophy of language was coming from philosophy of mind. He questioned the idea of a direct correspondence between language and reality, and he emphasized the importance of the context in understanding language. And Wittgenstein's evolution and paradigm change also involved the rejection of the Kantian idealism, as he was moving away from the idea that language directly mirrored reality. And instead, he seemed to embrace the idea that language tells us more about ourselves than the world outside of us. And we come to brain rot because it's all about language. It's new language. And brain rot, in the easiest terms, is a slang term used on TikTok and YouTube Reels to describe pretty much silly opinions, thoughts, and language that people can develop when they spend too much time online or in niche internet communities. And brain rot usually refers to videos or tweets that feel totally out of touch with reality, right? But the more I look into the origins of brain rot, the more I ask myself, did the meaning of brain rot change over the past year? Because in current days that we're in right now, I understand the term as being commonly used to label content with little to no artistic value, educational, or substantial value. And it's the term brain rot's pretty much painting a negative light on people who view it. And brain rots, when we say that, we're probably pointing to it's leading to the degradation of the rot of your brain, literally. And I've seen the term used earlier, like when I said a couple of years ago, as a word that some might refer to when they're constantly thinking about a topic, a person, place, or thing. A hyper fixation on something. Spurging, right? And you see this with neurodivergent folks in their spaces. And I'm asking you, Chad, somebody in the chat right now. Is there a reason the meaning of the word shifted from self-deprecation and unhealthy obsession to basically a garbage, brainless online content? And I'm thinking, people say that brain rot has no artistic value, but if I'm really gonna be honest, I don't really read it like that because, like, I wouldn't necessarily say someone who talks mindlessly about a sitcom they like, or even some of you perverts who, who always talk about porn or something like that, um, is necessarily can't get any artistic value off of that type of content. It's more like someone who thinks they know all the facts, but literally it's all lies, you know? So shout out to Dimitri Show in the chat. What's up, man? Good to see you. Let me drop this link in here. We got some content to discuss. Boom. Hit me up, bro. And what time is it right now? Shit is over there in the Netherlands. If it's 10:32 a.m. here in Taiwan, it must be 4:32 a.m. man. Appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you. Let's look at this. Gotta buy you some brain rot terms.
Act. People will often describe themselves as brain rotted in relation to this phenomenon, joking that their own minds have been irreversibly damaged by the horrors of social media. One could liken online brain rot to the endless halls of poker machines, with players tapping and dancing at their screens plastered with unknowable flickering lights and joyful sounds. Back when YouTube Kids had autoplay enabled by default, children would watch brain rot content for hours and hours on end, racking up terrible animation channels, millions of views and tons of cash, leading to massive criticisms of this practice such as Elsagate. As such, this video seeks to explore the concept of brain rot and pin down exactly where it is seen the most and why.
Thank you, yeah!
Whilst it's unclear who coined the term, brain rot started.
Well, that was straight live brain rot right there. This is what I was talking about, that skibbity doo toilet. This is actual brain rot. This is what I was introduced to brain rot content a couple years ago. Official brain rot content.
Pin down exactly where it is seen the most and why.
Thank you, yeah!
Whilst it's unclear who coined the term, brain rot started seeing major success when applied to the phenomenon, whereupon Subway Surfers footage, or Minecraft parkour, or those videos of soaps being cut paired with Family Guy clips were all the rage on TikTok. As such, brain rot shorts or brain rot TikToks are commonly positioned together as phrases, as the concept of watching ultra low quality content in high doses injected straight into one's eyeballs on a daily basis is generally associated with what the worst of social media has to offer. So-called satisfying videos would crowd the screens so much that the actual main content originally presented in a short would be heavily obscured, and the end result is a constant overstimulation destroying the brain. At this point, the onus of brain rot is also applied to certain generations of children, generally the ones who grew up watching YouTube videos on autoplay on their iPad.
It's a real thing, bro. I've seen it. Dudes playing a game on the Switch or PS5, and then he has his tablet, his surfboard, and is surfing at the same time. Wow, bro. Now this type of behavior, it seems like it would be conducive to not be able to concentrate, right, on anything for a substantial period of time, especially if the content is brain rot and doesn't have any educational value or even artistic value. However, what if it did have educational value and you were looking at one device, the phone, learning about how to build a car from scratch, automobile from scratch, and the other device you were learning how to paint like Jean-Michel Basquiat. Another device, like it's this. Are you going to retain it, or is that still rotting your brain? I don't know. Young man is beasting though right there.
aka iPad kids. Of course, this assumption seems to apply to Generation Alpha, but before then it was Zoomers and Millennials using social media too, and before then Gen X and Baby Boomers were considered the TV generations, and going back even further in history, it turns out even novels were considered brain rot because you weren't actively learning anything for reading a fictional story. Seriously, there was massive outrage regarding the hobby of reading for pleasure, which was described as addictive and antisocial, which sounds extremely familiar. Many also compare the popularity of early 2010s Gmod humor to the modern trends of the 2020s, demonstrating the fact that what may appear as mindless brain rot at first glance is often constructed with a story in mind. Due to this, the generational attack against Gen Alpha is quite unfair, although it does work to encourage rage bait and thus may be fun for some to exploit. Algorithms are in charge of spreading this content, often encouraging videos to watch the clips with the most engagement, which just so happens to be slapped onto GTA 5 footage or Minecraft parkour or videos of people peeling soap, aka brain rot.
That's what I'm telling you. They use the bells and the whistles to get your attention. The Minecraft and the GTA gameplay. Social media apps are deliberately addictive to users, of course. Of course, why wouldn't? That's the goal of almost every business, to keep you hooked.
In fact, social media companies prefer brain rot content to be the norm, as it ensures high retention levels, a metric that tech executives absolutely adore because it means audiences are giving their attention to an app designed to take advantage of human biology. Of course, this idea is one that has been reflected in pop culture for many years too. There's this fantastic comic called Tokyo Ghost that illustrates the idea of brain rot being taken to its extreme logical limit brilliantly. The comic is set in the future of 2089, in a world where everyone is addicted to watching shows and social media. One of the main characters, a hulking man named Led Dent, is constantly jacked into watching his newsfeed at all times, to the point where he becomes easy to manipulate and totally disconnected from the rest of the world, to the point that
Yeah, man. The kids will take their tablet with them to the bathroom if they could. They will take it to. They probably would take it to school if they could too, right?
has become a drug for him, blinding him to the fact that he's committing extremely violent acts without realizing exactly what he's doing. It's the perfect
Bro's laying there with his pants, his butt hanging out, looking at his optical lens screen. It's content. Literally rotting.
representation of how brain rot can manifest in a story, satirizing the very real fact that humanity is being bombarded with an overwhelming amount of information every single day, all designed to get us addicted to watching just one more video. You can see the same thing with the 2008 film WALL-E. It's well known that social media is designed to provide dopamine with every single like and every single click, so that we keep looking at it for as long as possible in order for tech companies to sell user data. That dopamine hit can be habit forming, and for some, social media addiction can be a very real problem, leaving them feeling worn out and tired after a day of watching mindless brain rot. It's not as if all social media content is brain rot. With a varied and balanced array of information, it can be totally fine to just chill out and watch your favorite YouTubers or gaming videos or whatever niche hobby you might have. But when it gets to hours and hours of watching exactly the same thing without any change, it can become a serious mental health issue as you fall into stagnation and cognitive decline. On that note, it's worth mentioning the fact that the word rot has become something of a meme in itself. Concepts like bed rotting have been bouncing around the internet for years, and perhaps much of this stems from the fact that humans are quite good at being self-destructive. There's also the satirical side of things, where creators pretend to be experiencing brain rot, such as Hepatitis BA4 referencing countless online bits of slang in an intentionally low-quality manner, which of course evokes
Actual brain rot in real time. Let me give you an example of brain rot.
Get a dozen double chunk chocolate blow nuts with skibbity sprinkle. Livy?
Anon. How the Sigma are you?
I'm doing W, if I'm being Shalon. You?
I was gonna yap the same thing. On Skip, are you rizzing anyone?
I am, yeah.
How is she?
She hawk twos my Drake. Even gives me blumpies after all you can eat night at Taco Joe. She even glazes my glizzy with her gyat. Gangnam Style.
That's so W.
You still running duos with Big Chungus?
Yeah, he learned how to flicker goon. And he even started reading Colleen Hoover books. Now we both goon on Book Talk.
That's so skibbity. I know how much you edged when I flicker gooned. It's so W that you finally found someone who can match your freak.
You know, I thought you'd be...
Libby Chungus.
It's like, bro, that's ridiculous. Like, what are they saying? What are they saying, bro? All the words, all these words coming out seemingly to come out of nowhere. But I guess if you're following the memes, you would know what they're talking about. You know, they'd be like Skibbity Gat, Riz only, and Duke Dennis, Risen Up Baby Grunk, Real Life Sigma Alpha, Mel Grindset, Andrew Tate Gooning, Freddie Fazbear, Calling Hoover, 1-2, Buckle My Shoe, Goofy Aiden Ross, all this shit, bro. It's crazy. Family Guy compilations and GTA Backrooms, Giga Chats, Bass Cringe, No Nut November, Looks Maxing, Mewing, Ice Spice Gooning with Kevin James, Laying Metal Pipe. I mean, it's time to get off your soapbox, Brandon. Brian the Brain Rotter needs to be stopped. It's feeding unsettling propaganda to our future generations and destroying our future change makers. And if no one else is going to do something about it, why not you? Why not me? Or don't do anything about it, right? Have a good life. You can watch my upcoming streams. I mean, right now you're listening to the Brain Rot stream. You see? And Wittgenstein. Right? And we got the Quetzalcoatl coming up too. 2025, the return of Quetzalcoatl, NPC the game. That's coming up. That stream's coming up. The love memes in Kildegard. What is love? Who do we love? NPC the game. Kildegard is saying that we need to love the least of us, meaning the ones who need love the most are the most despicable people. How easy is it to love people who are good to you, but is it really a challenge to do that? No. The people who are the most horrible need the most love. But are you going to be the person to give it to them? I don't know. We'll talk about it. We're going to do a build on why I hate a build and destroy. Why I hate Scorpios, right? Can't stand them. They think they know everything. They think they're at the source code. Bro, just because they claim to be some of the most egoless people in terms of personality, because that's all that the Zodiac is. Don't get no woo-woo about it. It's just your personality, right? On default. But you Scorpios, man, you think your shit those stink. So we're going to go in on you. Why I hate Scorpios, NPC the game. But we'll be fair with it. We'll say some of the good things you do as well. You know? Then we're going to have our Lurkachu stream. NPC the game, Lurkachu stream. Well, we're really going to be creeping on these panels and live streams to see what's really going on. Right. And then we got 72 days from now, the birthday stream. Right. The birthday stream. CCP chat box AI generated live stream. The birthday stream, aka the birthday stream. But now you're listening to the Brain Rot stream. What do you think so far? Let me know in the live chat. This is fascinating. this Walmart brain rot commercial, which is just came out about 9 days ago.
Oh, wow, everyone's really.
Walmart brain rot commercial.
Talon, that fits slays.
Cat, can I tell you a secret? We don't say slay, we say you ate.
You ate. Cool. What else you got? Maximum aura points. Pop in the preppy vibes.
Aura
Wait, is
points,
preppy cool again?
But it's different from how it was in the 1900s.
Oh, wow, everyone's really feeling themselves.
No cap, you weren't French or Ohio at all.
What's Ohio?
That'll be our lesson on the ride home.
Yeah, everyone's getting in on it. It's the thing to do right now, right? Well, it's the thing to do. Good old Wittgenstein and religion. A lot of people have a lot to say about religion. They even ask you what your religion is.
What is philosophy? Here's an example. Every day we ask each other the time and answer without any hesitation. But suppose one day we ask ourselves, what is time? Now we suddenly seem to be landed with a genuine classical philosophical problem, a very difficult one. Wittgenstein says that these problems arise through a disease of language. A myth has held us captive. We're caught up in the idea that words are names and that the meaning of a word is the thing that it stands for. And then we start investigating what that thing can possibly be.
Like when y'all say, I'm a Christian, I'm a Muslim, right? Are you, there's, what Wittgenstein would say, there's no essence of what that all Christians have just because of the name. They use the name Christian. What's really going on? What makes you a Christian though? That's what we're looking at. Not just what you say.
Wittgenstein himself held such a view, but now he...
No, not necessarily what it is what you say. It's more like it's not what you think it means, what everyone else thinks it means. It makes it so, the essence of it.
was trying to shake it off. Instead, he asks us to see words as doing jobs. Words are tools of many different kinds. Words are like chess pieces. The meaning of a piece is its powers, the part it can play in furthering the game. Well, all language is like that. We play games with language. Our language is a function of the way we live. It's a tool of social interaction. Now, this may sound rather abstract.
It is. It is abstract to say we play games with language, but we do. We play games. Games have boundaries and rules, right? They have rules that go by. However, a game may have rules, but it doesn't mean people don't push those rules or go beyond the rules sometimes. Because when they do push the rules of a game, they just make up new rules, right? Like if you're playing tennis, for example, and you throw the ball up to serve before you hit it, there's no rule saying that you can't throw it 5 feet above your head if you could, right? There's no rule, not yet, until somebody does it. That'd be like if someone had the superpower of being able to throw the ball 5 miles above their head, and then, yet they were still able to be patient and have the accuracy to hit the ball once it came down. I mean, they'd be following the rules of the game, but I'm sure the rules of the game will be changed if this was happening too much, right? We are playing games constantly. And in the games, people accept the rules until they're fed up. Reality tunnel games, perspective games, paradigm games.
But in fact, it changes everything. The old theory of meaning summoned up great nebulous abstractions which philosophers then worried about. But Wittgenstein's new point of view is strictly practical. Look at the grammar, he says. Look at the way the language works. If only you can see that clearly, you'll see all there is to see.
Look at the grammar of ethical terms, and such terms as God, soul, mind. One of the chief troubles is that we take a substantive to correspond to a thing. The words...
Those are all big things. God, soul, mind. Those are the main ones right there for people who say nowadays, even if they don't say they're religious, they say, I'm spiritual, but we know the essence of what they mean, what they're pointing at, you know, and they use concepts like that, God and soul and mind. But what are we actually talking about, though? What are they talking about?
Soul and mind have been used as though they stood for a thing, a gaseous thing. What is the soul is a misleading question.
So what will be...
I just asked that too. It's misleading because we must be actually pointing at something else. Maybe not the metaphysics, the metaphysicals behind the soul, what made it to what it is. What was the motivation behind it, or what's the actual specs of it? Could be pointing at something else.
Become of morality and religion on this new point of view? I think you can guess. Wittgenstein has a deep respect for the practice of morality and religion, but like Tolstoy, he's deeply mistrustful of the theory. On the whole, he thinks of religious beliefs not as being factual, but rather in terms of the job they do in shaping our lives.
Yeah, real enough. That's a phrase I always say. It's real enough. Some people that are kind of out of their mind, they want to debate this is a simulation or whatnot. And if you can't even change their mind, why even bother engaging with them, right? Because you're not going to have... It takes two idiots to have a foolish people, actually, I'll be nice, foolish people that have an argument that's going nowhere. And why be one of those people? Why even put yourself in that position when you can just say, oh, you believe that this is a simulation? Well, I can say that it's real enough, leave it at that. What else is there to probe about?
Until recently, not much more was known than that. But now a lot of fragments of Wittgenstein's observations and his private notes on religion have come to light. They show how deeply his thought about religion was embedded in everyday life.
His thoughts about religion were like he didn't put so much stock in the actual philosophical beliefs of the religion, but it was more about practice. Sounds like Allen Iverson. Practice? We're talking about practice, right? Who needs practice when you're constantly gaming? You're learning in the game. Yeah. You're in the middle of it. Let your actions show rather than your words, empty words.
One of my pupils, on my advice, has gone to work at Woolworths. Now that is the sort of thing you should do. Try and get a job in some large store where you will meet ordinary people.
Did that for about too many years to count, man. And woman. Philosophy 101 at the register. So many people from all different lives, from the CEO of GoPro all the way down to the schizophrenic lady who thought I looked like a young O.J. Simpson. Yeah, you meet all kinds, and you get to test their philosophies on life against their philosophies of life in real time. You see it in real time.
What is the use of studying philosophy if all that it does for you is to enable you to talk with some plausibility about some abstruse questions of logic, etc.?
Well, I guess what it does is if it's all you do is study it and don't go out and engage in, like, as they say, magic, and you're just in the theory, not in the practice. I guess if you're just into the theory, you can flex on people all day. And that makes, which kind of does feel good to a certain extent, but what value are you bringing to yourself and your level up? If that's your priority, if all you're doing is learning all these great, amazing theories on life so you can just flex on somebody. I mean, if that's what you do, that's what you do. But how much more fun would it be in getting a proper workout? It would be to test those theories and see them firsthand in the field. Mel Brooks said, "I'm a stand-up philosopher."
And if it does not improve your thinking about the important questions of everyday life, it is...
Jean-Michel Basquiat once said that, oh, he didn't even say this. It's just by people observing his method about how he stays constantly in the flow. He's always working on like 5 paintings at once. He said, well, we could say that if you're an artist, whatever your medium is, if you're engaged in your art, practicing it and creating it, make sure you have a life outside of creating your art. And when you go outside and stop creating, as soon as you stop creating, make sure you engage fully in whatever you're doing, be it at work, with your family, engaging people at the park or at the club. Because the more, as an artist, the more you're out there soaking in content by interacting with the world, the more context and information so you can flip into art you will have when you go create art. And you won't be at a writer's block if you're writing type of way, because you have to psych yourself up in order to start writing or painting your art or making your video. Is because if you're constantly in the state that everything's content, not content, everything's art, everything's creation that I can use to manipulate in a positive way for your tribe of excellence, every interaction becomes golden. Every interaction becomes an arsenal that you can use when you create art. So you've been working all day, however you're engaged in whatever you were doing hardcore. Within the back of your mind, you're thinking, I'm going to use this for my art. I don't even like to use the word content anymore. I have to catch myself. Art, man. You're going to have make beautiful music, literally. And the same thing, philosophy as well, which is an art form. Go out and experience life outside of the book, of the symposiums. So you can make it come alive.
Possible, still more difficult to think really honestly about your life and other people's lives. And the trouble is that thinking about these things is not thrilling, but downright nasty. God grant the philosopher insight into what lies in front of everyone's eyes. Not how the world is the mystical, but that it is.
So that's what we say. It is what it is. That's another way of saying it. Just looking at it. That's why people get so blissed out when they're so high on psychedelics or cocaine or meth or mushrooms, because it literally forces you to look at the awe of the creation from the Most High out there. And the thing is about, if you have some type of trippy ass experience, most of the time, probably because you used to get high all the time, and then you don't anymore, you could still, if you slow down your roll and your framing of the world, you can experience that. I experienced that recently. It was the first week of school of the new semester, and these classes are way different than my classes last year, where my students are a lot less revved up in a negative way, a lot less anxious, a lot less ready to cause chaos, right? They're a lot more orderly. So work's able to get done. I'm able to see things. Like, for instance, we're reading this book called The Giver in one of the junior high school writing courses I'm teaching. And it has a lot to do with memory. And we're talking about where the memories come from. And can you share memory? Had everyone share a memory in our brainstorming session for our essay we're going to write next week. And we have some super duper whammies of like memories people came up with. One of the students, she was saying how when she went on her first overseas plane trip, she ended up locking herself in the bathroom. That's the memory she had, right? And for a minute there, she thought she couldn't get out. And when they're telling these stories, I got shook for a minute and realized, like, whoa, it is kind of a mystical experience, but it's not mystical. It's just being locked into what God has offered us at any moment if you're paying attention. But that was interesting how through words and sharing narratives, how one can be time traveled into a spot where you can suspend time and almost be in the moment. So let's see what else we have here.
To renounce the pomps and vanities of this wicked world. Just think what that would really involve. Who of us today even thinks of doing such a thing? We all want to be admired. St. Paul said, I die daily. Just think what that must have meant.
The small death happens every day, every moment you wake up. It's the first day of creation if you're really looking at it that way. Especially if you had a bad day or night the night before. You die little deaths when you're worried about something, which you really shouldn't be worried about, because maybe there's no one really there there's no worrier. You just think there is. But since you believe that there's a worrier there, we'll call it the action figure. You worry every day. When you have to meet with somebody you don't really want to see or talk to, but you don't have enough courage to tell them, stay away. And you meet with them, and then you realize after the anxiety that, hey, it wasn't so bad. So you died. That old anxiety died. And you reborn again, only to, and I'm sad to say for most of you, worry about something else. Because most people are probably locked into that false sense of the self that they take as their true self.
For all you and I can tell, the religion of the future will be without any priests or ministers. I think one of the things you and I have to learn is that we have to live without the consolation of belonging to a church. Christianity is not a doctrine, I mean, a theory about what has happened or will happen to the human soul, but a description of something that actually takes place in human life. For consciousness of sin is a real event, and so are despair and salvation through faith.
Yeah, this is what we're talking about right now. No one is as hard on you as you are on yourself, mostly, even though you want to trick yourself and think you're not hard on yourself.
Perhaps we can say, only love can believe the resurrection. This can come about only if you no longer rest your weight on the earth, but suspend yourself from heaven. Then everything will be different, and it will be no wonder if you can do things that you cannot do now.
That's probably why we like philosophy. We enjoy philosophizing, because it does lift you off this terrestrial realm and puts you in the state of a zoomed out bird's eye view of what you thought was the only perspective. It lifts you above you, getting higher elevation. That's why people get high, because their awareness is getting bigger and bigger, you know? But trying to escape the terrestrial realm where there could be a lot of chaos. Hey, what's going on, Machine? We have our good friend
Yo.
Machine Lies. How's it going, brother?
Yo, what's going on?
It's just chilling, man. Musing over this Wittgenstein. It's just a crazy juxtaposition how I started the broadcast with the brain rot phenomenon, and then going here, and he was talking about people trying to escape into higher thoughts and stuff. So how you doing, bro? Do you have anything to share?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely Wittgenstein was on the wrong side of history, I think, in terms of philosophy. In terms of he went on the way of the analytics, and although he was sort of the wedge between continental and analytic philosophy, in a way, it does seem like his statement that the limits of your language are the limits of your world is basically also the beginning of postmodernism, in another way, because and also it seems like the whole idea coming from Bertrand Russell, that he was actually the protege of Bertrand Russell, right? So it's interesting in that way, because the Cambridge apostles were like these really weird group of people at Cambridge that included, I think it was G.E. Moore, I think also John Maynard Keynes, and also Bertrand Russell. So they were part of this like occult group, and you could really say like about them that each of those people were like on the cutting edge of their field. And in terms of Bertrand Russell, it really went to a really dark way, because Bertrand Russell, who is the mentor essentially of Wittgenstein, right? He's sort of like the darkest figure in philosophy. He's the reason why you get all of this analytic philosophy and also transhumanism and all these kind of ideas. He really thought society should be run by the needle, and he tried to get Wittgenstein into his like occult group, Cambridge Apostles, basically, where they had, essentially they would do gay shit with other dudes. Right? So that's one of the reasons why, and there's reports of that with Wittgenstein and Bertrand Russell and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, doesn't that go back to, you hear the whole mentee mentor stuff? The Greeks, right? They had their what do they call it? Their mentor. There was the mentor, and then they had their student, right? And then, or is that just another propaganda? Was it? Did it happen a lot in your research when you come across between the teacher and student?
Well, I haven't read that many significant histories of the Greeks and stuff like that. But when you read Plato, it's definitely in there with Plato. So if you read some of his writings, you get the picture that there's some fruity stuff going on. And then if you read the laws, his later writings in life, it seems like he changed his mind, because then he says, no, gay shit should be like against the law. You know what I mean, right? And then,
Mm.
but then if you
Yeah.
read Aristotle, he has sort of a different opinion about it. Aristotle seems he's more fine with it, you know.
Hmm.
So like, other than those two guys, I wouldn't really know much about it as a historical aspect of the
Right.
society itself. But I have read a lot of ideas within the Greeks where, in a way, like they thought like that men and men were equal to each other. Like they didn't see themselves equal to women.
Hmm.
So, like, in terms of sexual pleasure, they didn't count the sexual pleasure of a woman the same as that of a man, or something like that. So it's like they got into weird ideas with that whole thing. Like where they didn't really understand. You know, like some of them, like some of the Greek writers seem to be like that. s- Only equal sexual relations can happen between a man and a man, and that seems
Hmm.
very, very strange. I mean,
Very strange. Very strange, man. Wow. That's a that's disturbing, man. To come up with such other like great ideas, and then also believe that is like what's going on here, man? What's going on?
yeah, and if you
What?
look at Bertrand Russell and Wittgenstein, they're definitely of that persuasion.
Mm,
They're like super high intellectual types that were basically bisexuals.
mm-hmm. And in Bertrand Russell, that is someone that I've come across a lot in terms of the social engineering, like you said, with the needle. I think of Julian Huxley. Was he influenced by Russell too? Probably
Well, I think they were like around the same period.
around the same time. Yeah,
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 around the same time. Yeah.
yeah. They all these guys. They do, be it like I always come back to always mention Crowley. He was into that, with the uh, taking his ad up and like bending him over. Um, and even when you even say a lot of the postmodern philosophers, they kind of swung both way or were like totally gay, right?
Yeah, you see that with the existentialists and then the
Hmm.
postmodernists. You
Hmm.
see that not only did they get rid of definitions and in terms of things like existence and truth and all those and reality, they bifurcated things like truth and reality apart from each other. And really what they had at the end of the day was they wanted to destroy sexual mores. They wanted
Hmm.
dissolution of sexual mores and also cultural boundaries. And you see that with people like Foucault and all these types of people, where Foucault is, he did horrible things. This guy went to like Africa and apparently gave like little boys AIDS and stuff. So he's a
Wow.
total horrible person.
Hmm.
Totally. If it wasn't for French society, you know, nobody would have let him be a philosopher. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. I mean, can you imagine in any other society that he wouldn't have been allowed to walk outside?
Right. Do you see this even in the in the universities with the philosophy departments and humanities? A lot. I remember seeing it too. Like those
Well, I
type of
think
people. A lot of
less.
people.
I think less in the philosophy department.
Hmm.
Because nowadays, um, I guess philosophy is pretty rigorous in terms of like
Hmm.
what you would have to do. So I think it's more like scientists or something where it's just a high bar of entry where you're just not going to get a lot of women there. You know,
Right.
it's like
Right.
yeah, it's just about the level of performance. Because
Yeah.
it's like yeah, there's a lot of like things you have to consider, and it's a highly strenuous task. I feel like reading like Kant or Hegel or something like that. It's just very, very strenuous. you know, to read something like Spinoza or somebody like that, you know. So yeah, I think there's a high barrier of entry whereas like in the social sciences, definitely there's a lot of women, you
Right.
know,
Like
and
psychology and stuff like that, huh?
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, if you go to a university, yeah, there's a lot of women like teaching biology and psychology and
Hmm.
sociology and all those social sciences. And yeah, they're like, you know, some interesting looking ladies. I mean, I'll say it that way. You know, they got
That was
like,
nice.
yeah, they got like blue hair, red hair, you know, no hair, you know, and big
Hmm.
earrings and stuff, you know, polka
Yeah.
dot dresses on, white dress with polka dots. And it's like, what, and yeah, so definitely, I had to. You know, I was talking to a few of them where I thought they were students and they were teachers. You know, where I was like,
Mm,
you know, I didn't even realize.
yeah. I see the yeah, like we were watching that Discordian video a couple weeks ago, and the main lady that runs the website, she looked like a dude, looked like John Goodman, like a young version of John Goodman, man, from Roseanne. She didn't even look like Roseanne, man. Yeah, like, she was pushing that stuff. Yeah. Let me play this so we get our thoughts on this. This Wittgenstein, but because I'm glad you brought the other perspective on him, because people really don't hold him to task on a lot of these, like in a simple search of him on YouTube. So I'm glad you're here. Appreciate you. Let me see. Let's go ahead. Share. I'm still sharing. There we go.
A man who is suspended looks the same as one who is standing, but the interplay of forces within him is nevertheless quite different, so that he can act quite differently than can a standing man. An honest religious thinker is like a tightrope walker. He almost looks as though he were walking on nothing but air. His support is the slenderest imaginable, and yet it really is possible to walk on it.
When in 1949 Wittgenstein learnt that he was fatally ill with cancer, he told his doctor that he did not want to die in hospital. His doctor offered a room in his own home when it should become necessary. Over a year went by, and then a few months before his death, Wittgenstein arrived to take up residence in this room. Here he continued working until 2 days before the end. Wittgenstein, like Nietzsche, was a solitary, passionate and compelling figure. Both of them were tormented by the ultimate questions of life. Nietzsche broke his mind trying to force a new way through them. Wittgenstein took a different route. He sought a cure. 30 years before, he'd written that the answer to the riddle of life lies in the disappearance of the question. So he patiently unravels our illusions and forces us to return to the ethical reality of the everyday.
But what does that even mean? Like, he thought the solution was getting rid of the question. What is he getting at?
I think it's the same way that people are looking at Jung. You know,
Hmm.
where we just had this long discussion with realism versus nominalism, and it's almost a very very similar idea, because he's talking about language, and he's almost saying that once you get away from the fact that, you know, language limits your you know, perceptions of the world, then you can sort of use language however you want. That this realization doesn't actually uh you know, make language less powerful, but it
Hmm.
you know, gives you a power in order to use language in a way that you know, gives it more value, you know.
Mm.
You know, it's almost the same way that they were saying with realism, that realism doesn't just give ideas um life, but then it allows you to like sort of have your cake and eat it too in a way. So I think people like this sort of weird aspect of postmodernism where you'll see a lot of that today, that people will actually use postmodernism to justify their religious beliefs. You know,
Hmm.
instead of saying,
Yeah.
well, that means that postmodernism means that everything's just mythical. Well, they'll say, well, what's wrong with that? Then I have one too. So
Yeah.
it's funny how that goes. That uh, and of course with symbols, people are doing that with the symbolic world. They're saying, well, they're bringing back an idea like realism or these ideas by Wittgenstein in order to justify their beliefs or values, or to say, well, symbols or ideas or myths, they have real existence.
Hmm.
So so what does that mean? I mean, to certain people, it gives them the ground they need to proceed on, whatever quest they desire, and in that way, it's both dangerous, but also it's a way that the present situation opens up a lot more, and that people are not seeing what's actually been opened up, or what's been let loose.
Right. A lot of people are definitely feel freed up, and like I've tried to relate what we're talking about to this, and this, I don't know if you saw this. It's just so like a minute long. This brain rot where it seems as though people are talking with not just using symbols a lot, but all symbols in this language that people are talking. And it's not just, I've noticed it's not just people trying to be funny with their YouTube, video, but literally I've seen on other streams and like mostly gaming streams of younger people in their 20s and stuff. They're literally talking like this, bro. Let me show you this. Okay.
Chocolate blow nuts with skibbity sprinkle. Livy?
Anon. How the Sigma are you?
I'm doing W, if I'm being chalant. You?
I was gonna yap the same thing.
On skib?
On skip. Are you rizzing anyone?
I am, yeah.
How is she?
She hawk twos my Drake. Even gives me blumpies after all you can eat night at Taco Joke. She even glazes my glizzy with her gyat, Gangnam style.
That's so W.
You still running duos with Big Chungus?
Yeah, he learned how to flicker goon, and he even started reading Colleen Hoover books. Now we both goon on Book Talk.
That's so skibbity. I know how much you edged when I flicker gooned. It's so W that you finally found someone who can match your freak.
I thought you'd be edged off that I stayed with him in Ohio.
I was, at first, but the longer I edged...
And machine, I mean, you probably know, I don't know if you know about this shit, but like most of these terms, when you look them up, they all have to do with sex, and this is what like young kids are like talking like this, bro. And it's like guys in their 20s and 30s are making the channels where they're talking like this. And I only show it to kind of like expose it or whatever, and it's just wild, bro. What do you think in terms of language and Wittgenstein? How this brain rot relates to that, or if it does, or is a product of some of this stuff, or?
Well, I think it's like Orwell and Newspeak, right?
Yeah, cutting the words down, right?
Yeah, cutting the words down, cutting the thoughts down,
Yeah.
making people think in prepackaged lingo, and obviously, goes back to, yeah, if you limit your language, you're gonna limit your thoughts, yeah, definitely, right. I think a lot of those whole, and also the image capturing, there's almost so much space in your brain for images, and you see like nature, like every second you look at, what's going on out there, it's different. It's like almost every tree looks different. Where there's so much difference so much variation, but if you're looking at a screen as this prepackaged reality, it's almost like you're limiting the way you can see the world, because there's not variation in sameness. It's just mass produced. All
Right.
sameness is mass produced. So
Right.
it trains your mind differently than nature trains your mind. You know.
Hmm. Because even in this image right here, I'm pretty sure they're using the Unreal Engine, with a lot of people use for animation and video games nowadays. So it's like you see the same thing, even with not only with the language, hear the same thing with the language, but also with the images. And granted, this is over the top. I don't really think anyone uses. I hope not brain rot terms that much, but It's getting pretty damn near close with it. And then with the things about repetition of the reels that people watch, not only children but women and men, scrolling like that. They God forbid they could listen to any documentary or a lecture, that's more than like a half hour. Do you think that this type of technology of quick rapid reel watching reels could actually be flipped in a positive way if the content was changed, or it wouldn't matter because of the vehicles that's being used?
Yeah, sadly, I think it's the vehicles, right?
Hmm.
You know, yeah, I think, there's just so much, there's only so much you could put into this many characters of information and stuff that,
Hmm.
you know, that that just is beyond what can be said, and or what should be talked about. I think and I think people used to have these long conversations, long form conversations, and they thought that
Hmm.
this medium would bring that back, because it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna have podcasting and stuff,
Right.
but it seems like actually the majority, the volume of things are going in the other direction. Unless it was just like, all right, no, we're only gonna broadcast real conversations that people are having.
Hmm.
So it's just one-to-one conversation, or it's more people talking at the same time. Then it would be useful. But
Hmm.
but like that's not happening. So like, unless people had to verify, put their name and face behind what they're saying, and everybody had to come on, and only people who did that, yes, they'd be putting themselves at risk,
Hmm.
but those are the only people whose conversations would be heard in a way. That would be a way to guarantee such a thing. But as long as it's like this, nobody's ever going to learn anything.
Oh man. Yeah.
Or at least the noise will drown it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you don't really hear about like teenagers having podcasts or what probably you shouldn't even really be online that much, probably, if you're like below a certain age. Well, there's actual rules on YouTube, I think, and social media. You're not supposed to yet. People are on there. It's so funny that even for these like alpha millennials, I think they call them, the younger cats, on those reels that the people are making content for, they make these fake podcast shorts where like it seems like these guys are like talking about like a Joe Rogan like show, but they're talking about like about like Mario Kart or something all seriously, and it's done like in like 40 seconds. Yeah. So it's like really no value, but then it's presented like it's a podcast. Um, yeah. Remington, Redington, what's going on, bro? How's it going?
What's up?
Is your brain rotted from that?
A little bit
A
dead
little.
cells.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, I see adults doing it right now. Like,
Right.
for example, like I just came from a show where the Toilet Bowl Earth character was on the screen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's having a total fake fight with somebody, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're screaming at each other, and they're admitting that it's just a fake fight. and he's writing in the chat that it's a bit. Right.
Oh
So
man.
he's going on and threatening people and calling everybody all this type of stuff. And then they're playing clips of me because I'm in the chat. So they're playing clips of me trying to get me to come up on stage so that I
Mhm.
could start screaming and yelling at this guy. And I'll know once I start doing that it's total fake interaction.
Mhm.
Same-ish, different day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That it's him doing his fake he hates me and he hates Muslims, and then me saying, oh no, I hate you. And it's like, what?
Mhm.
So I just let them play the clip. I just leave,
Mhm.
because like, what's the point of having this totally fake staged interaction, right? And we're all adults here, and we're all gonna participate in this. To what end, right? So it's total like,
For the
you know,
bit, as they say.
yeah.
Like
So
what the hell? It's like for
yeah,
what?
so there's grown-ups doing this, and I mean, I at least witnessed like maybe half an hour to hour of this happening, and it's just like,
Mhm.
and yeah, happens every day, but it's just like, what's the point of
Mhm.
having these interactions, right?
Yeah. Did these people, like a lot of these people, ever stand on some type of like adult, serious content, and it just morphed into this because of social interactions and friends becoming enemies and all that, or was it always like that from the get go with these people?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what like the line was, was like, was it
Hmm.
like, was it like Fallen Slave? Like, was like Ben Thorpe? Was it like Sanity
Hmm.
Machine, where everybody just went like, all right, this is just, let's just do this fake and gay thing like all the time, It's like,
Definitely for some people, it was from the start. It was
Hmm.
all LARP
Yeah.
to draw people in.
Right. Because like I don't know too many places in the Panelverse that has like the have integrity or just being serious about learning and trying to really look at these big questions like
yeah, that's a
the
thing that,
machine lines, you know what I'm saying?
yeah, I think you'll find there's almost no other show.
Hmm.
So that's the sad part. So there's actually just one show.
Yeah,
It
even
doesn't
this one.
reflect. Sorry,
Sometimes this one.
it doesn't reflect well on society. There ought to
Yeah,
be more
No.
shows.
yeah, it's not a show like The Machine Lies. It's just a show that's called The
Right.
Machine Lies. That's how
Yeah.
sad it is at this point.
Or is it just this corner of the toilet? I'm not using his. I always called it the toilet bowl, like the manosphere, and I'll count this whatever this truther thing is. It is is it just because you think this particular spot of this network that we're all in, or is there other? Have you come across any? Oh, you just said you haven't found any, right?
Yeah,
Anything close?
that's the thing, is that we've sent our scouts out there to look far
Hmm.
and wide, and
Yeah.
they've come back with very little, to where, it's like, I guess it's like Pink Floyd. It's like, hello, is, is there anybody in there?
Nice.
It's getting
Yeah.
creepy.
So we're comfortably numb because there's nobody out there.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, yeah, yeah. I bet. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like one of those main scouts was Neurojack because when I was in his Discord, like there was I geeked out on one of the sections he had where he had like I guess it was like potential, like you said, like potential channels that maybe you could have networked with or whatever. And I went all the way to the beginning of that channel thread he had,
Oh
and
wow!
I found some interesting channels, but you know what's funny, guys? Like I would have to say like 40% of the links he had posted and other people had posted there, they were gone. Because either the channel got nuked by Susan or maybe the person just nuked their own shit.
Or whoever took Susan's place, she's no longer with us.
That's right, yeah. That's right. Um, but
But that
yeah,
was
this
recent though, so yeah, Susan.
yeah, yeah. And like I told you before, like I guess the closest I no disrespect when I say this, I came to like a channel like this was years ago with was Days of Noah, but then by talking to you though, you're saying like he has some blind spots, right? Or that he has machine.
You're talking about Owen Benjamin?
No, I said Days of Noah. Like like I that was like one of the other channels I found a long time ago that's had some type of seriousness, was pretty serious and whatnot. But then I remember talking to you like a couple months ago about like you were saying that like how it's kind of like he's more talking about the cultural
Well, I like
stuff.
Days of Noah and Adam Green, and
Yeah.
sometimes Owen Benjamin makes some good points, and there's a couple of these guys that make some okay points sometimes,
Hmm.
but when you look at the overall scheme of what they're promoting, I really have to question, and I gotta hold their feet to the fire just as anyone else.
Hmm.
And ultimately, I get the impression that it's definitely possible that there's something they don't see, or I don't want to say that they're gatekeeping, because I don't know them at all, right? But
Yeah.
the whole thing with it is that it definitely seems like there's places where their ideas are not willing to go, right?
Right.
So yeah, like for Days of Noah, it just seems like that is the whole Christianity and the fallen angle, and whether the technology really is evil or whether it's human beings or all of that type of stuff, right? So there's many unanswered questions there that I think are
Hmm.
like that you should really come up front with those questions, if you want to actually make an impact in these ideas, right? Because
Hmm.
yeah, because you don't want to like let those hang loose. Like for example, like last time we had Rant come on and he was trying to, sort of criticizing Dr. Kaczynski. But I think
Hmm.
like many of the things that he was criticizing Kaczynski also already says. So it's
Ah.
like
Yeah.
so it's like the thing is like yeah, but like Kaczynski said that. Right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
the thing with it is like unless you establish like here's like a whole list of what our directives actually are. Then we can talk about the problems. Or else if we don't know, then nobody knows exactly what to do or how far to go or how far can we go or where can we go from here if we present these ideas.
Hmm.
Because I think a lot of people who watch Days of Noah, they might be black pilled or they might think that they can you know separate themselves from the system, and I don't think that that's totally true.
Right. It didn't go far enough because, like you said, those questions are left hanging there. Um. Yeah. Uh, but it's not. It's like a lot of people have to give up if you go with Doctor K. What he's saying is your whole paradigm, your whole life would have to change.
Yeah. Yeah, and then with
And
Adam Green, it's like okay, like all right, like the Jays are running the thing and they're bad people and all this type of stuff. But like since you're looking at their myths and stories to determine that, do you believe what they're saying? Or do you believe they
mm,
have this power?
right,
You know,
right,
so I can't get over that objection. It's like wait, so you're ascribing all the power to them that they say they have.
yeah, yeah,
So in a way it's like so how can we challenge them, because the ultimate reflection that to gain from that is just black pill.
hmm which
It's
is
just like yeah,
nihilism.
yeah, it's just like the Days of Noah thing. It's like all right, well, the people who are running the system are creating technology to enslave us, so I guess we're just as good Christians we have to get away from these people.
Hmm.
But it's like what to where, you know what I
There's
mean,
no
right?
way to get away. We're
Yeah,
all
or
plugged.
like
We're all literally jacked in. We're
yeah,
jacked in.
or you're gonna create your parallel society, which is a Christian society, but like having it exist alongside their civilization is unimaginable, right? So like, so it's like, all right, yeah, you could have that, but it's going to be drones flying over every day. You okay with that? You know.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like I feel like the solution is not a solution, or like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the solutions people present are bigger than the problems themselves.
Yeah. And this goes back to the, Mr. K, right? When when people are trying to make the solutions, like you used a great example this week about the automobile, to save, make life easier, for humans. However, it just caused a lot more systems in order to support the system of the automobile that like took us out more of our free time and freedom. And what you're saying is like these so-called solutions from these other truthers, like it's maybe even making it worse. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like not only do they not have an adequate lens in which to look at the problems that we're facing, but then they
Hmm.
provide haphazard solutions that are worse than the problems themselves.
Yeah.
And so
That's a
that's
good word.
100%.
Haphazard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't look at without the guys, and you don't even have the level of understanding of the people that created the problems,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden you're going to solve them, by essentially proposing an ideology, that was defeated in the process of them creating the problems. Right?
Hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
what? It's like how is that possible? It's like
Yeah.
no, you need a new way of thinking at the
Well,
very
yeah. No.
least.
And the only way to do that is like kind of like what this now I see the similarity I see in you and Noah is like you guys definitely in your own ways took time out of your life and sacrifice and read the books, read the works, and muled and like and I ingested them and worked them around and see what you came out, see what came from it. Whereas a lot of people, and it's kind of like the same dichotomy of how if you need to strap the system, how it's gonna take discipline, right? And just like, but the ideas though too take discipline. And I don't see really anyone. We're a bunch of skimmers. There's a bunch of skimmers out there.
Yeah, well,
People
that's
don't
why I
even
bring
skim
up.
books, let alone, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
They don't even read a
yeah,
book.
that's why I bring up those two specifically, Days of Noah and Adam Green, because I always felt like Days of Noah is missing the religious aspect of the problem. He just talks about the technology, and with Adam
Hmm.
Green, it's like he's missing the technological side of the problem. He just talks about religion, right? So
Mm.
if they could sort of
Yeah.
combine their problems, or see that no, these two are really the same problem, then you'd
Hmm.
have a show, comparable to my own, where it's like, okay,
Right.
well, we're looking at look, we're seeing how, because that's really what transhumanism is, or at the other end, that's what the um secular humanism is. It's where religion and science come to a clash, right? So
Mm.
so if we're not looking at both together, right, then we're not actually looking at the issue, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Right. And then where did the digital shaman come into it? Like like the with the Rogan and the disinformation company that actually owns Alex Jones and is the manager of Alex Jones and Joe Rogan's talent agent. Guess like who's a big Discordian, and it goes deep. Like where does that come from? Because I was in that the sector of YouTube too before. Like these, I call them digital shamans, right? Occultists and stuff that are coming at the problem, right?
Well, it's really this idea that's coming from, the adaptation of um these people, like um the Theosophical Society. Really, they
Hmm.
were the ones popularizing the image of the shaman, right?
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
once it gets into the noetic science people, you know, the Esalen Institute and all these types of people, you know, then it became conflated with the drugs stuff, right? But
Hmm.
the whole idea of digital shaman really comes from Timothy Leary, because he
Right.
was because he was a cyberpunk, and he was also
Hmm.
involved
The,
in the shamanic type of theosophical um traditions. So he
hmm
so he really combined these two ideas together, saying that computers are like a drug, and and the mind is like, processing system, and all this type of stuff. He made all these analogies in his 8 circuit model, right?
right. You got it.
So he had all these ideas of definitely combining spirituality with cybernetics, and all these types of things. But he was not the only one to do that. There's a lot of people that do that.
Hmm.
Even Norbert Weiner was talking about ideas of science, spirituality, and in his book God and Golem. So the whole outset of computing and all these ideas, also I have a book by Stuart Brand. He was a huge proponent of psychedelics, and one of the first popularizers of these computers and all this type of stuff. So
Hmm.
so it's fascinating. You have all of these. You have a very, very close link between shamanism and the spread of computers. So when you get to somebody like Joe Rogan, right? He's already he's just the residue of this type of movement.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
like yeah, like all these Hollywood types. It's really all of them, like Leonardo DiCaprio and um and all these guys. They were all part of the drug movements and all that type of stuff. What's it called? Ben Affleck and those people that wrote um you know um Goodwill Hunting. They wrote Shawshank
Mm.
Redemption and all that. Matt Damon and Ben Affleck. That they're heavily involved in these movements
Right.
and all that type of stuff.
Right.
So the whole art culture, the whole bohemian culture, the whole bohemians, like the bohemians were there, at the start of the punk rock movement. eh.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
they started all of this type of stuff.
Right.
And even Africa Bambaataa was, he knew Malcolm McLaren and all that type of stuff. So
Oh,
it's
you
just
did? I
interesting.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't see
Oh
that.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh, that's a.
yeah, and even Malcolm McLaren, he made a hip hop record, back in the day, and stuff like that. So it's interesting.
Yeah, that's true. Even William Burroughs did too. It wasn't like marketed as hip hop, but it did sound like that. I don't know if you ever heard his Seven Souls rap, like spoken word to music. They played on The Sopranos season 5 on the intro during the monologue. And even in the Alan Greenspan, he was a beatnik, right? Bohemian that pushed that promoted ayahuasca from his book The Yaqui Papers, and he ended up being like a known supporter of NAMBLA.
Yeah,
You know,
you're talking about
not
Ginsburg.
Ginsburg. Excuse me, I said it, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, right?
Yeah,
That's,
yeah.
he's probably into some
I
shit
was
too,
about to
machine.
say.
Yeah, let the boy cook, even if it's bad for a second. I have to clean it up, man. No, and but Timothy Leary, bro, he not only was he the digital shaman, but he was heavily involved in politics. I remember reading recently about how he hosted at his home the a big fundraising dinner for Ron Paul in 1980 when he was running for president, and he used a computer. He mailed that computer disk with what you said, talking about his 8 circuits of the brain, and he had his book Your Brain is God, and he was promoting libertarianism. And that libertarianism, doesn't that have some weird connections too, and the people like Tucker Carlson and John Birch Society, which are kind of like the gatekeepers of conspiracy theories and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You
Yeah.
know, yeah, the Chicago School of Economics and all of that type of stuff. You know, it's with Milton Friedman and these guys. Yeah, yeah, they're definitely. You know, you know, they started this neocon movement. You know, really.
hmm hmm Machine, where does Silicon Valley play into this? That's my hometown, San Jose. If we're talking about the machines, I mean, I always compare it to kind of like Skynet. What's going on there?
Well, it's like California, Austin, and you know, Florida. You know, they got like tons of connections, and also West Virginia. You know, that's like all the places where the feds hang out. You know, so it is what it
Yeah.
is. You know?
Yeah. Neurojack with the comment: Kurt Cobain and William Burroughs hung out right before he died. Real cultural icon right there, Nirvana. Kurt
Yeah,
Cobain.
Burroughs and I mean Ginsberg. They went to those punk shows. You know, they basically started the whole thing with the Bohemian movement. Started the punk movement. You know, and all of that type of stuff. You know, so there's a real connection there. You know, to all the countercultural movements and these sort of psychedelic gurus, right?
Right.
And how they were funded by the people who basically started this operation, you know, paperclip. You know, so you know, it's all part of you know, like Ginsberg was basically you know, part of the you know, one of these LSD like clinics that was ran by this you know, Operation Paperclip psychologist, you know, psychiatrist, you know.
Right. And then that military, that what was he, that colonel? Forgot his name.
Yeah.
He just started dosing everyone.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so these guys got dosed by scientists that were in the military, and yeah, they were studying them probably after that, you know.
Yeah. I love it how like speaking of the Bay Area connection of Ken Kesey, the Merry Pranksters, how he was working at the Veterans Hospital we have out there by Stanford, Palo Alto Veterans Hospital, right? And that's where they were doing the LSD experiments on him out there. And then he was while he was working there, and then he ended up becoming famous because he wrote "One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest." And then his acid Kool-Aid parties, electric acid Kool-Aid parties, ended up spawning the Grateful Dead. They were the house band for his parties, and that's just, yeah, man. And those same deadheads are the ones probably that made the computers and technology years later, that the reason why we're surfing the apocalypse right now, maybe. You know? So it's but do you think there's enough, what I call them, white hats, like good guys and those engineers, or they're pretty much all compromised?
Well, that's what we were talking about at the beginning of our show last time. You know, it seems like even, you know, fairly smart people who you know, have a few scruples about them seem to you know, have come into the belief that, you know, perhaps there may be good people among the elites that are trying to save humanity and all of this type of stuff, and it's absolute fantasy.
Yeah. It's just like laughable when they say Elon Musk.
Oh, it's totally laughable. They're trying to parade him like he's some kind of what would you call a crusader? Not necessarily a crusader, but like someone pro free speech with acquiring Twitter. But it's like it's just an exchanging of hands. Like I don't see it as a really positive change overall. It's just like, okay, well, he buys Twitter, and then everybody's like, oh, we have free speech again. They're not censoring us like they were. But it's like kind of like a lure almost, I would say. Like especially if they want to make new rules and want to enforce like totalitarian kind of censorship down the line, they go retroactively punish people for saying stuff on Twitter because they opened it up for people to feel like they have some freedom again.
So you think they're like throwing us a bone?
Like exactly, like they can throw us a bone. They can use the carrot or the stick. Either way, they have all the cards in their hand.
Yeah, and it's so funny, like to see like over the years, Alex Jones go back and forth on Elon, like doing like 15-minute hit piece videos about him. How is like he comes from money and he really doesn't come up with any of these innovations. He just hired the people and all this crazy shit. But then like he totally glazes him now. Like goes whatever's convenient, I guess, for their narrative, for control. Yeah.
Yeah, the only way I could see if somebody was actually, going to be helping us, that's part of the elites, and somebody's telling me that, is if they knew them. But then they would have to verify how they got those connections or figure that out about those people. And it's like unless you're part of the elite or you have some kind of connection, they would start looking sus themselves. Right? So I don't even understand how somebody would ascertain that, this party in the elites or that party in the elites is going to save people. It's like, how are you privy to this information? I mean, let's just be real,
Yeah.
And everybody has everybody has weak points. Everybody has where they're weak, where they can get basically kowtowed to whoever's pulling the strings. If you have family, if you have loved ones that you care for very much, they could use that against you. So it's not really just about money. It's more about control, because once you get to a high enough amount of money, it just doesn't. It's not about that anymore. You have all the money in the world, so what does it then become? It becomes control.
Yeah, power, status. Yeah. And this is what it seems like crabs in the barrel. Maybe the politicians and economic leaders do like some type of altruistic, like charity type stuff, just so they can save face and look like they're not a douchebag, while they're just all their main purpose is to climb up and do good for themselves and survive. Survive.
Right. Well, it's a lot of it, at least certainly for politicians, it's smokescreen for money laundering and stuff like that.
Yeah. So when we come to China, because like I'm right here in Taiwan, 100 miles away from China, do you guys think that's political like theater? In terms of like, even though they do fly their planes over here a lot, every day, tens of them all the time, do you think it's beneficial for the so-called elites for there to be a war out here? How do I just switch the subject on that? Or all this political theater, geopolitical really doesn't matter, unless you're like literally in a place where they're about to blow, have a war. But
I mean,
go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Red.
I don't know enough about that region of politics. It seems rather complicated to some degree. I mean, if you have Taiwan making all the computer chips, that's something that needs to be either protected or moved to a different location.
Yeah, definitely crucial to the world, right? What is that? The brain of the CPU, the the semiconductor, you know. So
for the motherboards and everything.
motherboards, yeah, yeah. It's so strange though. Like I talked about this before in my broadcast. Like people live their life here like normal, dude. Like you would in Seattle or Detroit or Santa Cruz, California. They just live their life, right? Yet we every day we have planes, Taiwanese planes, Air Force flying over our heads 3 times a day in formation, like patrolling and whatnot. But no one freaks out. Yet at home, I get a different story because my friends and family back home, I'll get every couple of months or whatever, like a call in the middle of the night, because of the time difference, and they'll be like, "Are you okay? Did the war start already?" Just because the way the media, the MSM promotes their stories, their pro-war agenda.
Oh,
Crazy.
it's all the networks. They all do
Yeah.
it. It's always antagonizing China as if they're going to do something.
Yeah. When in fact they're like the long game. They're like, this is the year of the dragon, and the dragon lays in wait for many years. It's a slow game, man. It's slow.
Of course.
Yeah.
Do you think the planes flying over is more of like a try to signal like protection to everyone? To
a
say
good
that
point.
like they're safe, the military's keeping them safe.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, definitely. And also too, it's not like in America where the military base, especially the Air Force base, are kind of more in a rural part, of an area. They literally though have so many bases weaving throughout the island. They're everywhere, And even some of the airports, they have like they do double duty as a commercial airport. Not that there's a lot of airports, but a commercial airport and Air Force base. But yeah, I do think it's protection, and I have to admit it could be an annoyance, especially when I'm trying to teach teach a grammar lesson and I hear the planes going over my head at 5 But but it's good. I'd rather be, know that there's going to be some type of protection. Yeah, even though I would try to get the hell out of here before that, but I feel bad for my family and friends here that doesn't have the option. But I don't really think anything's gonna happen though. In the long run, it's just we have other pressing issues. Bro, but Machine, what spurred you on this? I don't know, this righteous crusade about the machines, bro, and their influence. What was the moment, or was it like a build up or something? Because you're relentless, bro.
I think it was definitely since I was a kid, but yeah, I think I really like Taoist things, like I really like medieval shit. Like ever since I was a kid, like I was more like into like ninjas and samurais and like like medieval texts and things like that. So as soon as I got like 13, I used to study a lot of stuff like that. You know, so 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 like I started reading, I guess, um like classical Chinese texts and classical philosophy texts when I was like 13 or 14. Um and it really was starting with the Tao Te Ching, and also um uh also Machiavelli. I thought Machiavelli was like really interesting to me. So I really got into, I wanted to know like more like Sun Tzu and like all that type of stuff, and just kind of know how those people thought. And then when I read it, I found out that these guys are actually very, very moral in a way, and they're very, very much about studying and knowledge and all that type of stuff. So I thought that's kind of weird. Like these guys aren't really about like fighting people and all that type of stuff. It's it's more about like governance and knowledge and order and all that type of stuff. So I started seeking out what that's about, but I found they're naturally opposed to, you know, science and in a way they're opposed to technique as well. So then when I read works that were more like, I really hated when I was a kid, like, I guess, like, science, like, I think it
Yeah.
really started with a hatred of, like, just science and, like, the scientific way of thinking and how they had to order everything and just people in fucking lab coats giving people orders
Mm.
and stuff, and I thought, "No, I thought, no, this is actually, order and conformity and all these types of things." Like, I don't know, like, like, that sort of, sterile idea, of, like, and it really came from my parents because my parents are doctors, right? So they wear, like, the coat and the white
Right.
coat and, and all that type of stuff. So I thought of, so all these things crossed in my mind, and I thought, man, science and a world governed by science and medicine, and where everything's, like, medically sound and sterile, and all
Mhm.
that type of stuff. I thought, man, that is really the opposite of what I want to be. So two of the things I really gravitated towards was music and philosophy, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and in those two things, I really found that, you know um there's something about nature versus technology that I should pay attention to. But ultimately, I think it came from the religious understanding. When it came to Dr. Scribina, I wanted to know about nature versus technology, right? And his whole idea was that the religious ideas had got us into the problem, and I really, wanted to disagree with him about that, right? Because I
Mhm.
thought, well, nature's created by God, and how could it be that, and also I thought, well, it's the scientific worldview that really despises religion, and look what it's doing to nature. It's the
Mhm.
one that's creating all these machines. So this conflict arose in my head because in his head he was presenting it as, well, religion gave us the idea that, it's all about heaven. It's not about this world.
Right.
So we can trash this world, as long as there's heaven coming up next. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, so I really disagreed with him about that, and the whole conflict with us really caused me to learn as much about this problem as I possibly could, about the
Yeah.
machines and technology and how our religious worldview and all these things fare into the problem. So
Mhm. Yeah, that's badass, bro. The Yeah, so if we're up in the like Sabina was saying, like, with the religion, it causes people to focus on the afterlife and not focus on being here now. What's going on here. Um, would you even say, because with the rise of secularism, that the majority of people, they might not be here but they're not necessarily thinking about the hereafter. Like, they're thinking about this false um morphogenetic field of entertainment and whatnot that they're locked into, you know? Because it seems like people believe in entertainment more than in like numbing their pain more than in any afterlife, which was considered a drug for a lot of people too. Some hope. The hope is dope type of shit. Like, at least when I die, I can go to I can go to Jannah or I can go to heaven. But now I don't even
oh
think people
yeah.
believe that shit.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, today he would agree that there's a problem in people not having enough religion, or
Hmm.
not seeing that there's a greater purpose to life. But I
Hmm.
think he's more talking about how people got into this problem. That
Hmm.
it was more a style of thinking that got into this problem. But but yeah, now I think most people would agree that people have a lack of understanding of deeper questions, and that is why they're so easily distracted, right, by
Yeah.
those things that are like literally not causing. Like I've even came across some people that, when I hit them with some deeper philosophical question or problem, they'll point to some piece of, content or something that they've consumed recently that's pointing to the same issue. But when you look at it and you look at what they've been looking at, you feel sorry for them because it's taking such a shallow look at the problem,
Yeah. Like
And it's
that
like,
right there.
yeah.
Yeah. Like that. This is what I get the image of, this is the perfect image for me about what's happening, bro. Yeah. But some of the people, it's funny, like to bring it back to the paddleverse and stuff. Some of the people that claim they're truthers, this is actually what they're doing. And then like after they have their and they may throw out a little like their truth, bomb here and there, but they're, like you said, the haphazardness and not doing due diligence is really wasting a lot of time, and that's something that you help me re-engage with, is due diligence and academic discipline, and like really looking at something, because it's just so boring, and it's not almost like eating only junk food, where it's like, yeah, you're eating something and a lot of something, but there's no substance. And I think a lot of these philosophers that I'm re-engaging with, even though they have some nefarious ways about them, there's still some substance there that I can like take and try to figure out what's going on, rather than just skimming shit. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there's always
what do you have?
been. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, please, Red. Go ahead.
There's always been some level of escapism throughout the centuries. I think even back in Greco-Roman world, you had certain drugs that were taken recreationally to ease the pains of life back then, when they had a lot more threats to deal with,
Mhm.
like from even day to day, watching out for snakes, scorpions, and whatnot, and so just the burden of life back then caused people to go for escapism. You have the Lotus Eaters in the Odyssey,
Yeah.
and stuff like that as an example of playwright of Homer talking about that kind of issue. But I think today with the technology, it's more encompassing. It's more invasive than it was all those years ago. So that's why I think it's much more of a problem, very more dangerous now than it was then, because at least then it didn't really. You still went back to your day to day life and faced reality, no matter what you did. Whereas today,
Mhm.
you can, at least in first world countries, you can almost completely disregard real life to the point where you're physically unhealthy and your brain is rotted, like this topic is about.
Mhm. Yeah. Well said. What's a solution we can point to? Of course, we're not gonna have time to really finish that, but what's the step one? In, I mean, I'll add this: don't put it down, put the shit down. What?
For one thing, excuse me. For one thing, we have to create incentives for it to be away from technology.
Yeah.
Especially the infotainment, or whatever you want to call it, or
Yeah.
entertainment, amusement, um, pastimes that don't really benefit physically or mentally. There
Mhm.
are some pastimes that there are pastimes that can be helpful, but to the point where it's out of balance, moderation is key. So there has to be at the very least we have to create incentives and realize that our goals don't really mesh with technology all that well in the long run. But that's a really hard sell for most people because we're pretty much certainly these younger generations are now growing up with technology in their hand, basically coming out of the womb. So it's like almost telling them not to breathe in a way.
Right. Right. Like I was talking about this on the show, one of the shows the other day. And as soon as that baby sees the parent with the scrolling their phone on Candy Crush or whatever, and it's gonna gravitate towards it. It's gonna gravitate towards it. Yeah.
Exactly. So the parents have to certainly parents have to set a good example, which is hard to do since it's definitely addictive to anyone on any age.
Yeah, because it's so easy to just to like let them play on their tablet or whatever device they have, and bro, the time could go like, oh, that was 4 hours later. But that's horrible though. But
exactly,
it's the babysitter, man. Man, yeah. But I don't have to make. But like, I'm glad you said that. The incentive. That's instead of just saying put it down. Okay, we put it down. Now what? But you said the incentive, right? And
nature abhors a vacuum, so you have to replace it with something that's constructive, something that ultimately benefits us, and that benefits one's children in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we went to like a water park on a little vacation last week before school started, and my son didn't do any of that screen time, which was rare, that time, and then playing basketball with them, and a lot of it for me it's like physical, but it's good to incorporate that reading in there too,
Exactly.
So, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so we're coming up on 2 hours, and I really appreciate you guys coming up here, Red and the Machine Lies. I really respect you guys a lot, you men a lot. And on one level, it is kind of, I mean, I can do these. I've done 100, I was counting like 150 of these lives before so far. And like, it is so much refreshing to actually have real people that are, that know their shit, I'll say. And I really enjoyed having you on. What do you got coming up? The Machine Lies.
Well, basically, trying to get that last episode back on there, and that one disappeared.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm sad about that because it was a good one. But but basically, continuation of that. When it comes back, we'll figure out what we're gonna continue on, and next time, essentially, I have a lot more on the issues of technology and that stuff. So we're taking more of a look at that. And last time, if you guys saw, at least the second part of the show, the first part of the show, I tried to open up for discussions, and it really went 50-50. But the second part of the show had lots of different ideas. Alan Turing and John C. Lilly and those types of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to combine. Yeah.
I want to get
so
on that one.
Yeah. So I'm trying to combine those ideas with McKenna and those guys, and also Timothy Leary. So we're looking at more of their ideas, and because they're relevant at this stage, and I don't think people actually have the ability, like on those Joe Rogan type of shows, they just promote these guys, and they never scratch they don't scratch the surface or really delve into what they're saying. When you listen to these guys talks, it's like they're promoting all this weird shit like Freemasonry and John D and all this. It's like, what the fuck is this? So we need to actually sit down and listen. Otherwise, there's going to be tons of hippie chicks listening to this fucking Alan Watts shit and one day you're gonna have a conversation with them and it's gonna go weird, you know.
Yeah.
Awkward conversations with the lovely lady, as they say, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stand Alan Watts personally. He's just too, from what I've seen, he's too airy. He too dances around things, and
yeah,
maybe people find it inspiring, but it just doesn't do it for me.
He's a total queef burger, but he's actually, but at least he's got like couple weird points where he'll actually bring in medieval philosophy or something, or Shang Tzu or something where it's fine to work with. But all that Mahayana Buddhism stuff, that is strictly for the birds, you know, because it is a wayward philosophy that literally allows anything. It's basically postmodernism, you know. But
yeah. He's interesting. That cat's interesting. He definitely was a source of, I guess, like at one time he was like my digital grandpa. I used to listen to a lot of his stuff. Right? Yeah, and then he was a professor at my university, California Institute of Integral Studies, small little school in the city, San Francisco, and he started the East-West psychology department there, grad school, and it's funny because like when I was listening to a lot of them, I was all excited, like, oh, this, you know, he's so great and all this. And I remember one of the customers I had, she came into my store, and I was talking to her, and I said something about, I mentioned Alan Watts. She's like, oh, you know Alan Watts? I go, yeah, he's great. Like, you know, have you listened to him before? Because I thought, like, you know, she did listen. She's like, no, I used to babysit for him. Because, you know, they lived in the Bay Area, Marin County, right outside San Francisco. She's like, yeah, I used to babysit his kids when I was a teenager. He's like, I hated him. He was so pretentious and a drunk. I was like, oh, this is you know, this is the God telling me, like, humble yourself, Gabriel. Don't put these people on a pedestal. She's like, I hated him, man.
Don't meet your heroes.
Right. But all these guys are connected. Like, I love that, finding someone I like and then putting on the search, like, so and so exposed, to see what it comes up, you know. And I don't mean any ill will towards it, but it's good to hold these people to task and see what they're really about, right? And I look forward to these shows, these broadcasts, Red and the Machine Lives that are upcoming. That, you know, we're going to get in on this stuff, on these people. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go get my my Benjamin, my son. He's doing good with his first grade stuff. Got swimming later on, and this has been the Brain Rot and Wittgenstein NPC the Game live stream, and I hope you enjoyed it. And you guys stay on for a second, just 1 second. This 1 second when I play this intro, is only like a outro, is only like a minute or something. So I'll see you guys later. Everyone in the chat, appreciate you, Neurojack, Watts Life, all you guys. Peace, and we'll see you next time here on NPC the Game.